She rushed into the Millionaire CEO's car by mistake with her sick son. Not knowing he'd been searching for her for years. He's mine. Isn't he? It wasn't a question. David Smith's voice cut through the darkness of the car like a blade, his gray eyes locked on the feverish child in my arms. The child who had his jawline. His thick dark hair. His exact expression when something was wrong. I pulled Marcus closer to my chest, shielding him even though I knew it was too late. The secret I'd protected for 6 years was unraveling in the back seat of a billionaire's car, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. He's mine, I shot back, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I carried him. I raised him. I've been there for every fever, every nightmare, every scraped knee and first day of school. You don't get to claim him just because biology made you a contributor. David flinched like I'd slapped him. Good. I wanted it to hurt. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of what I'd felt 6 years ago when I discovered I was pregnant the same week he vanished from my life without a word. I didn't know, he whispered. Foxy, I swear to you, I didn't know. Because you didn't want to know. You disappeared without a trace. You left a note that said forget me like I was some inconvenience you could just discard. So don't sit there looking wounded when I had to make choices about my child's safety without your input. Marcus stirred against my chest, his fever-bright eyes opening just enough to look between us. Mama. His voice was small and scared. Who's the angry man? Nobody, baby. Just someone helping us get to the doctor. But even as I said it, I watched my son's eyes move to David's face. I watched the recognition happen in real time. The same recognition that was tearing my carefully constructed world apart. He looks like me, Marcus said. Like in the mirror. He has my face. The silence in the car was suffocating. David made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. And outside the rain-streaked windows, the hospital finally came into view. But getting Marcus to safety was just the beginning. Because what I didn't know yet, what David was about to tell me, would shatter everything I thought I understood about why he left. Everything I believed for 6 years was a lie. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Not 6 years ago when my heart broke. But 6 hours ago, when my son's fever hit 104 degrees and the world started closing in. The rain had been falling since noon. Not the gentle kind that makes you want to curl up with a book, but the vicious, sideways kind that turns streets into rivers and makes the city feel like it's trying to drown itself. I'd noticed Marcus was warm that morning. A little clingy. A little quieter than usual. But kids get colds. That's what I told myself as I dropped him at school and headed to my office. Kids get colds and then they get better, and worrying about every sniffle is how first-time mothers lose their minds. By 3 in the afternoon, his school called. Miss Carter, his teacher's voice was professionally calm in that way that immediately makes your stomach drop. Marcus's temperature is elevated. He's been having trouble breathing. We think you should pick him up and maybe see a doctor. I was out the door before she finished the sentence. When I got to the school, Marcus was sitting in the nurse's office, small and pale against the green vinyl chair. His dark hair was damp with sweat. His breath was coming in short, shallow gasps that made my heart stop with every pause between them. Mama. He reached for me with arms that felt like they weighed nothing. I don't feel good. I know, baby. I know. We're going to get you help. The pediatrician's office was closed. Some emergency with the doctor's own family, the voicemail explained with maddening calmness. Please try again tomorrow or visit urgent care. Urgent care was 20 minutes away. Marcus's breathing was getting worse. I bundled him into the car and drove through the rain with both hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Every red light felt like a personal betrayal. Every slow driver was an enemy combating my son's survival. We were 3 blocks from the urgent care clinic when my phone died. No warning. Just a black screen and the realization that I had no GPS, no way to call ahead, no lifeline to anyone who might help. That's fine. I knew the way. 3 more blocks. We'd make it. Except when we got there, the lights were off. A handwritten sign on the door said closed due to staffing emergency with a phone number for the hospital that I couldn't call because my phone was dead. The hospital was 8 blocks away. 8 blocks that might as well have been 800 with a 5-year-old burning in my arms and no car in sight. I stood on that corner for 11 minutes. I know because I counted the seconds between Marcus's breaths and calculated time based on the increasingly terrifying gaps. 11 minutes of watching taxis splash past without stopping. 11 minutes of waving desperately at rideshares that already had passengers. 11 minutes of my son getting sicker while the city ignored us. That's when the black car appeared. It pulled up to the curb like it had been summoned, sleek and expensive in a way I didn't register until much later. I didn't notice the custom paint job. I didn't notice the lack of rideshare logos. I didn't notice anything except the open door and the chance to save my son. I dove inside. Providence Medical Center, please. It's an emergency. My son, he's sick, really sick. I'll pay you whatever you want, just please. The words died in my throat. Because the man sitting across from me wasn't a driver. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. His dark hair was silvered at the temples in a way that suggested authority rather than age. And his eyes. Those gray eyes that had haunted my dreams for 6 years were staring at me like I was a ghost he'd conjured from memory. Foxy. His voice was rough, disbelieving. Is that really you? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Couldn't do anything except stare at the face of the man who had shattered my heart so completely I'd spent 3 years convinced I'd never let anyone close again. David Smith. Billionaire CEO of Quantum Industries. The man who had promised me forever and then vanished without explanation. The man whose child was burning with fever in my arms. The man who apparently had no idea he was a father. James. David's voice cut through my paralysis, directed at the driver. Providence Medical. Now. Every traffic law is optional. The car surged forward, pressing me back against the leather seat. My arms tightened around Marcus automatically, even as my mind raced to process what was happening. How long has he been like this? David asked. Since this morning. The fever started last night, but I thought it was just a cold. Then he started having trouble breathing, and his temperature spiked, and the clinic was closed. I was babbling. I knew I was babbling. But my son was sick and my past was sitting 3 feet away and the collision of those two realities was short-circuiting every rational thought I had. What's his name? The question was quiet. Careful. Like he already suspected the answer but needed to hear it anyway. Marcus. My voice came out stronger than I expected. His name is Marcus. How old is he? David. How old? 5. He turned 5 in March. I watched him do the math. Watched the color drain from his face as he counted backward from March. 6 years. The summer when everything between us had exploded. The summer when I'd found out I was pregnant the same week I'd found out he was gone. That's when he said it. That sentence that hung in the air between us like a grenade with the pin already pulled. He's mine. Isn't he? And I gave him the only answer I had. He's mine. I raised him. You don't get to claim him because biology made you a contributor. The rest of the conversation you already heard. The accusations. The denials. Marcus waking up just enough to notice that the angry man in the car looked exactly like him. What you haven't heard yet is what David said next. After Marcus fell back into his feverish sleep. After the hospital came into view through the rain. After I'd said everything I'd wanted to say to him for 6 years in the space of 5 furious minutes. I've been searching for you, David whispered. For 6 years, Foxy. I've had private investigators on 3 continents looking for you. I've never stopped. Not for a single day. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by his expensive lapels and demand to know what kind of game he was playing. Why, I demanded instead. Why search for someone you deliberately walked away from? His answer changed everything. I didn't walk away. I was protecting you. The car stopped. The hospital entrance blazed with light through the rain-streaked windows. And before I could process what he'd said or demand the explanation I desperately needed, David was out of the car and pulling open my door. Let me carry him, he said. You're exhausted. I can see it. Please. I wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at me to keep Marcus close, to not let this man who had hurt me have any claim on my son. But my arms were shaking. And Marcus was getting heavier by the second. And the emergency room doors were right there. I let him take Marcus. Watching David cradle our son against his chest, murmuring reassurances as he strode toward the entrance, something cracked inside me. Not broke. Not yet. But cracked. Like ice beginning to thaw after a winter that had lasted far too long. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and hurried consultations. David pulled strings I didn't even know existed. Suddenly Marcus had his own room instead of a curtained cubicle. A pediatric specialist appeared within minutes instead of hours. I stood against the wall, watching doctors examine my son, feeling simultaneously grateful for David's resources and furious that I needed them. Miss Carter. The doctor's voice pulled me back to the present. The doctor glanced at David. I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the relationship. It's Miss Carter, I said quickly. I stopped. What was David exactly? A stranger. The father of my child. The man who'd vanished from my life and apparently spent 6 years trying to find me again. I'm the father, David said quietly. I'm here to help however I can. The doctor nodded, accepting this with professional ease. RSV, she explained. Respiratory syncytial virus. It's serious at his age, but we caught it in time. We'll need to keep him overnight for observation and for fluids. The breathing treatments are already helping. You can see his color is improving. She was right. Marcus looked less pale than he had an hour ago. His breathing was still labored but the gaps between breaths were shorter, less terrifying. He's going to be okay, I breathed. He's going to be fine, the doctor confirmed. You did the right thing getting him here quickly. Another few hours and we'd be having a very different conversation. She left to check on other patients, and I found myself alone with David in the hallway outside Marcus's room. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and the weight of everything that needed to be said. You need to eat, David said quietly. And change into something dry. You've been in those wet clothes for hours. I'm not leaving him. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm saying I'll stay with him while you take care of yourself. 20 minutes. That's all. You don't get to give orders. You don't get to act like we're a team. Foxy. His voice was patient in a way that made me want to scream. I'm not trying to take over. I'm trying to help. I know you have every reason to hate me. I know 6 years of silence can't be erased by one explanation. But right now, in this moment, we're two people who love that little boy in there. Can we start from that? He was right. I hated that he was right. But Marcus was stable, and I was soaking wet, and the cafeteria was just downstairs. 20 minutes, I agreed. There's a cafeteria on the second floor. I'll grab coffee and come right back. I didn't grab coffee. I sat in a bathroom stall for 10 minutes, crying the tears I'd been holding back since Marcus's fever spiked. Since I'd stumbled into David's car and watched my carefully constructed world fracture along fault lines I thought I'd sealed forever. 6 years. 6 years I'd spent building a life without him. Building a business from nothing. Raising a child on my own. Learning to need no one because the one person I'd needed had proven that needing people was a weakness I couldn't afford. And now he was here. Sitting with our son. Claiming he'd been searching for me. Saying he'd been protecting me. I didn't know what to believe anymore. When I returned to Marcus's room, I found David in the chair beside the bed, holding our son's small hand. He was telling a story. Something about a brave knight who had to leave his kingdom to fight dragons far away but who never stopped dreaming about returning home. The knight's biggest regret, David was saying softly, not noticing me in the doorway, was that he missed so much of the prince's life. All the adventures. All the discoveries. But he hoped, more than anything, that he could still be there for the adventures yet to come. Is this a true story? Marcus asked weakly, his eyes heavy with medication and exhaustion. It's the truest story I know, David replied. I stepped into the room, and David looked up. Our eyes met across the bed of our sleeping son, and for a moment, all the anger and betrayal and fear fell away. What remained was simpler and more complicated at the same time. We had both loved each other once. We had both done what we thought was necessary to survive. And now we had a child who needed us to figure out how to move forward. He asked me to tell him a story, David said, almost apologetically. He said you always tell stories when he's sick. I do. I took the chair on the opposite side of the bed, keeping careful distance between us. He loves stories about brave people who overcome impossible things. He gets that from you. The bravery. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't try to charm me, David. Not tonight. I'm too tired, and there's too much you haven't explained. Then let me explain. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together like a man about to confess. Not everything. We'll need more than one conversation for that. But at least the beginning. I'm listening. David took a breath that seemed to carry the weight of 6 years. The week before I disappeared, my brother was killed. The police ruled it an accident. Car going off a bridge. But I knew better. There were threats, Foxy. Demands for controlling interest in quantum industries. When I refused, they made good on their promises. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'd known about his brother's death. It had been in all the papers. But I'd never connected it to David's disappearance. I'd assumed he'd left because of me. Because I wasn't enough. Because someone better had come along. I received a message the day of the funeral, David continued, his voice barely above a whisper. A photograph of you. Walking into your apartment building. And a note that said, she's next unless you cooperate. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. You're lying. I'm not. I swear to you, I'm not. I left to draw them away from you. I agreed to their demands, gave them access to parts of the company, funneled money where they wanted it. In exchange, they promised to leave you alone. But only if I never saw you again. If I tried to contact you, tried to warn you, they would know. They had eyes everywhere. Why didn't you go to the police? Because some of the police were part of it. The corruption went deep, deeper than I'd ever imagined. It took me 4 years to unravel everything. 4 years to gather enough evidence to bring them down. 4 years to eliminate the threat completely. And then what? I demanded. The threat's gone and suddenly you decided to look for me. I never stopped looking. David's voice cracked. Even while I was fighting them, I was searching for you. But by the time it was finally safe, by the time I could breathe again, you'd vanished. New name. New city. New life. Because I was running from you, I said, but the conviction in my voice wavered. Because I thought you'd abandoned me. The note. The note I left. Forget me. It's the only way to keep you safe. I'd memorized every word, turned them over in my mind 1,000 times trying to understand. I thought it was a coward's goodbye. I thought you'd found someone else. Something else. Anything that wasn't me. I needed you to hate me, David said quietly. I needed you to move on because if you'd known the truth, you might have tried to help. And that would have put you directly in their sights. I needed you angry enough to run, and you did. You ran so well my investigators couldn't find you for 6 years. I didn't know how to process this. For 6 years, I'd built my identity around being abandoned. Around being someone who wasn't worth staying for. And now David was telling me he'd left to save my life. That the note wasn't rejection but protection. That everything I believed was wrong. Marcus stirred between us, pulling his hand free from David's grip to rub his eyes. Mama, he mumbled. Is the story over? Not yet, baby. Go back to sleep. Is the angry man still here? I looked at David, who looked like he might shatter if Marcus called him that again. He's not angry, I said carefully. He's someone who's been lost for a long time. And he's finally finding his way home. I didn't know why I said it. I didn't know if I believed it. But something in David's expression when I spoke those words made me think that maybe, possibly, I'd said exactly the right thing. Before I continue with this story, before I tell you what happened in the days that followed that impossible night, I need to pause and speak directly to you. We're in the middle of something here. A story about secrets and survival and the terrifying possibility that the person who hurt you might not be the villain you've made them in your mind. If you've ever been abandoned. If you've ever spent years hating someone only to discover the truth was more complicated than you knew. If you've ever had to decide whether to believe a story that changes everything you thought you understood. Then you know exactly what Foxy is feeling right now. And I want to know what you think. Would you believe David's story? Would you give him a chance to prove he's telling the truth? Or would 6 years of pain be too much to forgive, no matter what the explanation? Drop a comment right now and tell me. Hit that like button if you're invested in this story. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Stories if you want to find out what happens next. Because trust me, we're just getting started. And the next part of this story is where everything gets complicated. Now, back to that hospital room where two people who used to love each other are trying to figure out if they can ever trust each other again. The night passed in fragments. Marcus's fever broke around 3 in the morning. I was dozing in the chair beside his bed when his small hand found mine, cooler now, less frighteningly hot. Mama, he whispered. I feel better. I pressed my palm against his forehead and nearly sobbed with relief. You do, baby. You really do. David had stepped out at some point, giving us space or maybe just needing to breathe. But when I looked toward the door, he was there. Standing in the hallway with 2 cups of coffee, watching us through the window with an expression I couldn't quite read. I excused myself and went to him. His fever broke, I said. The doctor said if he continues improving, we can take him home tomorrow afternoon. That's wonderful. David handed me one of the coffees. It was exactly how I liked it. Cream, no sugar. The fact that he remembered after 6 years made something twist painfully in my chest. "We need to talk," I said. "Not now. Not here. But soon. About everything. I know. Whenever you're ready." "I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. But I think I have to do it anyway." The next morning, Marcus was well enough to be discharged. The doctor gave us strict instructions about rest and hydration and follow-up appointments. David listened as intently as I did, asking questions about warning signs and recovery timelines. He was good at this, I realized. At showing up. At paying attention. At making himself useful without trying to take over. I didn't know what to do with that information. "Where are you staying?" David asked as we prepared to leave. "I can drive you home." "We have an apartment on the west side," I said. "But it's fine. I can call a rideshare." "Let me take you. Please." "It's not about controlling anything. I just want to make sure you get home safely." There was something in his voice. Something that sounded like fear. Like the prospect of watching us walk away again was physically painful. "Fine," I agreed. "But then you leave." "I need time to think." "Of course. Whatever you need." The drive to my apartment was quiet. Marcus fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the ordeal. David kept his eyes on the road, giving me space to process. When we pulled up to my building, I saw him looking at it. Assessing. Not with judgment, just with the kind of attention he'd always paid to details. "It's not much," I said, suddenly defensive. "But it's ours." "It's a home," David replied simply. "That's what matters." He helped me carry Marcus upstairs, waiting while I unlocked the door and settled our son into his bed. When I came back to the living room, David was standing by the window, looking at the wall of photographs I'd accumulated over the years. Birthdays. First days of school. Random Tuesday afternoons that had seemed worth remembering. 6 years of life he'd missed documented in cheap frames and careful arrangement. "He was so small," David said, pointing to a photo of Marcus at 6 months. "I can't believe he was ever that small. Babies usually are." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've built an incredible life, Foxy. I've seen some of it. The investigation files, when we finally got close. You started a business. Raised a child alone. Built a community around you. Not alone. I have friends. Support. People who showed up when you couldn't." He absorbed that without flinching. "I'm grateful for them. But I want to show up now. If you'll let me." I didn't know how to answer that. So I changed the subject. "The threats," I said. "The people who killed your brother. You said you eliminated them. What does that mean exactly?" "It means they're in prison." David turned from the window to face me. "The investigation took 4 years, but I gathered enough evidence to put them away for life. Multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, corporate espionage. They're never getting out. And you're sure there's no one else? No one who might come after us now that you've found me?" "I'm sure. I've had my security team monitoring the situation for 2 years. There's no remaining threat. If there was, I never would have approached you. I never would have risked putting you in danger again. You didn't approach me. I jumped into your car by accident." Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. Fate has a sense of humor. Fate has terrible timing. The smile faded. "You're right. It does. I've thought about this moment for 6 years, Foxy. What I would say to you if I ever found you. How I would explain. How I would beg for forgiveness. And now that you're here. Now that I'm here, I don't have the words. Nothing I say can undo the pain I caused you. Nothing can give us back the 6 years we lost. All I can do is tell you the truth and hope that someday, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday, you'll believe that I never stopped loving you. That leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. That finding out I have a son I've never known is both the greatest joy and the deepest grief I've ever experienced." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The emotions were too big, too tangled, too dangerous to put into words. "You should go," I finally said. "Marcus will be waking up soon, and I need to think." "I understand." David moved toward the door, then stopped. "Can I see him again?" "Not today. But soon. I want to know him, Foxy. I want to be part of his life if you'll let me. I'll think about it. That's all I ask." He left, and I stood in my small living room surrounded by 6 years of photographs and tried to figure out how to rebuild a world that had just been turned completely upside down. The first call came 2 days later. I'd spent those 48 hours oscillating between anger and confusion and something that might have been hope if I'd been willing to admit it. Marcus was recovering quickly, bouncing back with the resilience children have and adults lose somewhere along the way. He asked about David. More than once. More than I was comfortable with. Who was that man, Mama? The one who looks like me. I'd given him a version of the truth. He's someone I knew a long time ago. Someone I haven't seen in years. Is he my daddy? The question hit me like a physical blow. Why do you ask that? Because Tommy at school says daddies look like their kids. And that man looked like me. So is he. It's complicated, baby. That's what grown-ups say when the answer is yes but they don't want to admit it. I'd laughed despite myself. When did you get so smart? I was born smart. You tell me all the time. The phone rang that evening. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Foxy. David's voice was hesitant. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from the hospital emergency contact form. I know that's probably a breach of something, but I needed to. He stopped. Started again. How is Marcus? How are you? He's better. Running around like nothing happened. Kids bounce back faster than adults. And you? I'm processing. That's fair. I don't want to push. But I was wondering. I was hoping. Could we meet? Just to talk. Somewhere public if that makes you more comfortable. Coffee or lunch or whatever works for you. I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to hang up, to protect myself, to remember what it felt like when he left. But there was another part of me. The part that had never stopped wondering. The part that needed answers to questions I'd been asking for 6 years. Tomorrow, I said. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Main. Noon. I'll be there. I showed up 15 minutes early because I wanted to control the space. Choose my seat. Have my coffee already in hand when he arrived. David walked in at exactly noon. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt instead of a suit. He looked more human than he had in the hospital. More approachable. More like the man I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. He spotted me immediately and made his way to my table. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sitting across from me. I know this isn't easy. Nothing about this is easy. But I have questions, and you have answers, and I need to understand what the last 6 years of my life actually were. Ask me anything. I'd prepared a list. Actual written questions, organized by topic, designed to get the information I needed without opening myself up to emotional manipulation. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was different. Did you think about me? I asked. When you were fighting them. When you were trying to take them down. Did you ever think about me? Every day. David's voice was rough. Every single day for 6 years, Foxy. You were the last thing I thought about before I fell asleep and the first thing I thought about when I woke up. I kept a photograph of you. The one from the trip we took to the coast. You were laughing at something I said, and the sun was behind you, and you looked so happy. He paused. I used to look at that photo when things got really bad. When I wasn't sure I was going to survive. When I thought maybe it would be easier to just give up. I'd look at your face and remember what I was fighting for. I didn't know what to say to that. So I moved to the next question. The threats. How did you know they were real? How did you know your brother's death wasn't just an accident? Because I received a video. David's face darkened. A video of the car going off the bridge. Filmed by someone who was clearly there watching. Making sure it happened. With a voiceover explaining that the same thing would happen to everyone I loved unless I complied. That's horrific. It was. And it worked. For a while. I did what they wanted because I couldn't bear the thought of them doing to you what they'd done to Jason. I couldn't lose you like that. So you lost me another way instead. I chose losing you over burying you. David's voice cracked. It was the worst choice I've ever had to make. And I've regretted it every day since. But if I had to do it again, knowing what I knew then, I'd make the same choice. Because you're alive. Because you're sitting across from me right now. Because our son exists and he's beautiful and brilliant and I may have missed 5 years of his life but at least he has a life to live. The logic was twisted and painful and made terrible sense. Why didn't you tell me? I pressed. Why didn't you warn me? I could have gone into hiding knowing the truth. I wouldn't have spent 6 years thinking you abandoned me. If you'd known the truth, you would have tried to help. David's voice was gentle. You would have put yourself in danger trying to fight alongside me. And these weren't people who could be fought by sheer will and determination. They were killers, Foxy. Professional, ruthless, connected killers. The only way to protect you was to make you run without knowing what you were running from. So you made me hate you instead. Yes. The simplicity of his answer broke something loose inside me. I want to hate you, I said, and my voice was shaking. I want to hold on to the anger because it's been keeping me safe for 6 years. But I don't know how to hate someone who gave up everything to protect me. Even if the protection felt like betrayal. David reached across the table and his fingers brushed the back of my hand. Just barely. Just enough. You don't have to decide right now, he said. You don't have to forgive me or trust me or let me back into your life. All I'm asking for is time. Time to prove that I've changed. Time to show you that I can be the man I should have been 6 years ago. Time to know my son, if you'll let me. I pulled my hand away, but gently. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. I stood up, gathering my things. One more question, I said. The note. Forget me, it's the only way to keep you safe. Did you mean it? Did you actually want me to forget you? David looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw 6 years of loneliness and regret and love that had never died. No, he said quietly. I wanted you to remember me. I wanted you to wait for me. But I knew that was selfish. So I told you to forget, hoping you'd hate me enough to move on. Hoping you'd build a life without me and be happy. And was I supposed to be happy? I didn't know if you would be. But I knew if I didn't give you the chance, if I dragged you into my fight, you might not survive it. And a world where you're alive and hating me is infinitely better than a world where you're dead because I was too selfish to let you go. I left the coffee shop without another word. But his answer stayed with me long after I walked away. He hadn't wanted me to forget. He'd wanted me to live. And despite everything, I was starting to believe him. That night, Marcus asked about his daddy again. We were eating dinner together, spaghetti with red sauce because it was his favorite and I was trying to make up for the scary hospital experience with comfort food. Mama, he said, twirling noodles around his fork. Can I meet the man who looks like me again? Why do you want to meet him? Because. He paused, thinking with the intensity only children bring to important questions. Because maybe if I meet him, I'll understand why I don't have a daddy like the other kids do. Maybe he can explain. My heart cracked clean in half. You know I love you more than anything, right baby? I know. But that's not the same as knowing why my daddy wasn't here. He was right. It wasn't the same. And for the first time in 6 years, I had an answer I could give him. A truth that wasn't just me isn't worth staying for. Okay, I said slowly. Okay. You can meet him. Marcus's face lit up like I'd handed him the sun. Really? When? Soon. I'll call him tomorrow and we'll figure it out. But Marcus. I need you to understand something. What? I leaned across the table and took his small hands in mine. He's been gone a long time. And there are reasons for that. Complicated grown-up reasons that aren't about you at all. But if you meet him and decide you don't like him, or if he turns out to be someone we can't trust, we'll walk away. No matter what. You and me against the world. Okay. Okay, Mama. Marcus squeezed my fingers. You and me against the world. I called David that night after Marcus was asleep. He wants to meet you, I said without preamble. Properly. As his father. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. David. I'm here. His voice was thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't begin to cover it. Don't thank me yet. This isn't forgiveness. This isn't me trusting you. This is me giving my son something he needs. If you mess this up, if you let him down, there won't be another chance. I understand. Saturday. The park near my apartment. There's a playground. We'll be there at 10. Be on time. I'll be early. And David. I paused, not sure how to say what I needed to say. He's going to ask you hard questions. He's smart, smarter than most 5-year-olds, and he doesn't accept easy answers. You need to be ready. I'll be ready. I promise. I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long time, wondering if I'd just made the best decision of my life or the worst. I guess we'd find out on Saturday. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that makes everything feel possible. Marcus was up at 6, too excited to sleep, bouncing around the apartment in his pajamas asking every 5 minutes if it was time to go yet. It's not even 7, baby. The park doesn't open until 8 and we're not meeting him until 10. But what if he gets there early? What if he's waiting for us right now? Then he'll wait. That's what grown-ups do when something is important. They wait. Marcus considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher examining a new theorem. Is he important, Mama? The man who looks like me. I didn't know how to answer that. So I told the truth. He might be. We're going to find out. By 9:30, we were walking toward the park. Marcus held my hand so tightly I could feel his pulse racing through his fingers. He was wearing his favorite shirt, the blue one with dinosaurs, and he'd insisted on combing his hair 3 times before we left. I need to look nice, he'd explained. So he knows I'm worth coming back for. The words had nearly broken me. David was already there when we arrived. Sitting on a bench near the playground, watching the entrance with the kind of focus I remembered from years ago. The kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. He stood when he saw us. He was wearing jeans and a casual sweater, nothing like the billionaire CEO I'd encountered in the car. He looked nervous. Uncertain. Human in a way that made him harder to hate. Marcus stopped walking about 20 feet away. That's him, he whispered. That's the man from the car. That's him. He really does look like me. He really does. Marcus squared his small shoulders with a determination that was entirely his own. Okay, he said. I'm ready. We closed the distance together. David didn't move toward us, just waited. Letting Marcus set the pace. Respecting boundaries he had no right to cross. Hi, Marcus said when we reached the bench. I'm Marcus. I'm 5 years old. My favorite color is blue and I like dinosaurs and spaghetti but not at the same time. David smiled, and it was the most genuine expression I'd seen on his face since he'd stepped back into my life. Hi Marcus. I'm David. I'm 37 years old. My favorite color is also blue and I like dinosaurs too, especially the ones that fly. Pterodactyls aren't really dinosaurs, Marcus corrected with the confidence of someone who'd watched every nature documentary ever made. They're pterosaurs. It's a common mistake. David blinked. Then laughed. A real laugh, surprised and delighted. You're absolutely right. I stand corrected. What other dinosaur facts should I know? And just like that, they were off. Marcus launched into a detailed explanation of the differences between theropods and sauropods while David listened with genuine attention. Not the polite nodding adults usually offer children, but actual engagement. Asking questions. Making connections. Treating Marcus's knowledge like it mattered. I watched from slightly apart, letting them find their rhythm. After about 10 minutes of dinosaur discussion, Marcus turned to me with a look of satisfied approval. He's smart, Mama. He knew about the meteor theory without me explaining it. I know, baby. Can he push me on the swings? The question was directed at me, but it was really a test for David. Would he defer to my authority? Would he wait for permission? Would he understand that he was here on borrowed time and borrowed trust? If your mom says it's okay, David replied without missing a beat. It's okay, I agreed. They walked to the swings together, and I followed at a distance. David pushed Marcus with exactly the right amount of force. Not too gentle, not too rough. Somehow instinctively understanding what a 5-year-old needed. Higher, Marcus shouted. I want to touch the sky. You got it, buddy. Buddy. The casual endearment landed differently than I expected. Not presumptuous. Just natural. Like David was trying on the language of fatherhood and finding it fit better than he'd hoped. They played for an hour. Swings and slides and a climbing structure that Marcus had been too small for last year but could now navigate with confidence. David kept pace without taking over, following Marcus's lead, letting my son show him around the playground like a tour guide presenting his kingdom. This is where I scraped my knee last month, Marcus explained, pointing to a specific patch of mulch. There was so much blood. Mama didn't even cry, but I could tell she wanted to. Moms are brave like that, David said. The bravest. She's the bravest person I know. Something shifted in David's expression. Something soft and sad and grateful all at once. I think you're right about that, buddy. I think you're absolutely right. By 11:30, Marcus was getting hungry. David offered to buy us lunch at a cafe across the street, and before I could refuse, Marcus had already accepted on our behalf. They have grilled cheese, Mama. The good kind with the crispy edges. Fine, I conceded. But we're paying for ourselves. David opened his mouth to argue, saw my expression, and wisely closed it again. Of course. Whatever you're comfortable with. The cafe was small and crowded with weekend families. We found a table in the corner, Marcus chattering the entire time about which dinosaur would win in a fight against which other dinosaur. T-Rex would definitely beat Spinosaurus, he insisted. Even though Spinosaurus was bigger. Because T-Rex had stronger jaws. Some scientists actually think Spinosaurus might have the advantage, David offered. Because of its size and the fact that it could probably swim. Marcus's eyes went wide. Spinosaurus could swim. There's evidence it spent a lot of time in water. Like a crocodile with legs. That's so cool. Marcus turned to me with excitement radiating from every pore. Mama, did you know Spinosaurus could swim? I did not know that, I admitted. You and David are teaching me all kinds of things today. The look Marcus gave David in that moment was something I'll never forget. It was the look of a child who had found something he'd been searching for without knowing he was searching. You know lots of stuff, Marcus said to David. Like stuff that's not in my books. I read a lot, David replied. But I bet you know things that aren't in my books either. Like what? Like how to make your mom laugh when she's sad. Like which stuffed animal is best for sleeping with. Like all the important things that only you know. Marcus considered this seriously. Mr. Penguin, he finally said. Mr. Penguin is the best for sleeping. He's been with me since I was a baby. That's exactly the kind of important information I'd never find in a book. The grilled cheese arrived, and for a few minutes we just ate in comfortable silence. It felt surreal. Sitting in a cafe with the man who'd broken my heart and the child who'd put it back together. Watching them find connection like they'd known each other forever instead of less than a week. Can I ask you something? Marcus said suddenly, his grilled cheese forgotten. David set down his own sandwich with careful attention. You can ask me anything. Why weren't you here before? Mama says it's complicated. But I'm smart. I can understand complicated. I watched David's face cycle through a dozen emotions in the space of a heartbeat. Fear and grief and love and regret, all fighting for dominance. You're right, David said finally. You are very smart. And you deserve a real answer. He glanced at me, asking permission. I gave a small nod. A long time ago, David continued, before you were born, some very bad people threatened to hurt your mama. I had to go away to stop them. To keep her safe. But going away meant I couldn't be here with you. I didn't even know you existed until last week. Marcus processed this with visible intensity. So you didn't leave because you didn't want me. I didn't know about you to want you or not want you. But Marcus. David's voice was fierce with conviction. Now that I do know, there is nothing in this world I want more than to know you. To be part of your life. If you'll let me. Mama said if I don't like you, we can walk away. You and me against the world. That's what she said. Your mama is absolutely right. You don't have to like me. You don't have to trust me. I have to earn that. And I'm going to try my hardest to earn it, every single day, for as long as you'll give me the chance. Marcus looked at me. Then back at David. Then at his grilled cheese like it might hold the answers to life's biggest questions. I think I might like you, he said finally. But I need more data before I decide for sure. David's laugh was wet around the edges. That's very scientific of you. I respect that approach. I'm a scientist, Marcus confirmed. Well, I'm going to be one. When I grow up. I'm going to study dinosaurs. A paleontologist. Is that what it's called? That's exactly what it's called. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. Then yes. I'm going to be a paleontologist. And maybe you can help me practice. If you come back. The hope in that last sentence was almost too much to bear. If you come back. Like he was already preparing for disappointment. Like he'd learned from watching me that people who left didn't always return. I'm coming back, David promised. As often as your mom will let me. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. Not ever again. It was a big promise. Maybe too big. But watching my son's face light up with something that looked dangerously like belief, I found myself hoping David could keep it. That was the first of many visits. Over the next 3 months, David became a regular presence in our lives. He flew in from New York every other weekend at first, then every weekend, then sometimes during the week when he could manage it. He video called Marcus every night before bed. Just 15 minutes at first, then longer as their connection grew. They talked about dinosaurs and school and the elaborate Lego city Marcus was building in his room. They developed inside jokes I wasn't part of. They created a world between them that was uniquely theirs. And I watched. Carefully. Critically. Looking for the cracks that would prove this was all an elaborate performance. The cracks never came. David showed up when he said he would. He called when he promised to call. He remembered the small things, like Marcus's preference for strawberry ice cream over chocolate and his fear of thunderstorms and his habit of putting his shoes on the wrong feet when he was excited. He didn't try to buy Marcus's affection with expensive gifts. The presents he brought were thoughtful rather than extravagant. A book about pterosaurs with beautiful illustrations. A fossil kit for beginning paleontologists. A stuffed Spinosaurus that Marcus immediately named Dr. Scales and added to his bedtime rotation alongside Mr. Penguin. He's consistent, Elena observed one evening when she stopped by for wine and analysis. I'll give him that. Elena had been skeptical from the beginning. Protective in the way only best friends can be. She'd interrogated David during his third visit with the intensity of a prosecuting attorney, asking pointed questions about his intentions and his timeline and his plans for the future. He'd answered every question without defensiveness. Acknowledging his failures. Explaining his choices. Never once making excuses for the pain he'd caused. I don't trust him, Elena had said afterward. But I trust that he's trying. And that's more than I expected. Now, 3 months in, even her skepticism was softening. Marcus adores him, she continued. You can see it in how he lights up every time David walks through the door. I know. And you? How are you feeling about all this? I don't know, I admitted. Confused. Scared. Hopeful in ways I don't trust. You're allowed to hope, Foxy. You've survived enough. Maybe it's time to try living. It was almost exactly what David had said in the hospital. And I still didn't know how to answer it. The announcement came on a Friday evening. David had flown in that morning for the weekend. We were having dinner at my apartment, spaghetti because it was still Marcus's favorite, when David cleared his throat with the kind of deliberateness that meant something important was coming. I have some news, he said. I've been making some changes at the company. Restructuring. Delegating more responsibility to my executive team. Okay, I replied cautiously. And I've decided to open an office here. In this city. It'll be small at first. A satellite location. But it means I can spend more time here. Not just weekends. Possibly 3 weeks out of every month. Marcus nearly knocked over his milk in excitement. You're going to be here all the time. Not all the time, David corrected gently. But a lot more than now. I don't want to miss any more of your life than I already have, buddy. If you and your mom are okay with it, I want to be closer. Marcus looked at me with an expression of desperate hope. Can he, Mama? Can he be closer? The question wasn't really about geography. It was about permission. About whether I was ready to let David further into our lives. About whether 3 months of consistency was enough to outweigh 6 years of absence. That's a big decision, I said carefully. Moving your whole life for. I'm not moving my whole life, David interrupted gently. I'm restructuring it. Around what actually matters. For 6 years, I prioritized work over everything else. I built an empire but I was completely alone in it. That's not success, Foxy. That's just expensive loneliness. I don't want that anymore. People don't change overnight, David. You're right. They don't. But they can change gradually. Intentionally. If they're willing to do the work. I'm willing. I just need you to give me the time to prove it. I looked at my son, who was watching this exchange with the intensity of someone whose entire future hung in the balance. I looked at David, who had spent 3 months proving himself reliable and present and committed. I looked at the life I'd built. The walls I'd constructed. The protection that had kept me safe but also kept me alone. Okay, I said finally. Okay. Open your office. Be closer. But David. This isn't me saying we're together. This isn't me forgiving you. This is me giving you the chance to be a father. That's all I'm offering right now. That's everything, David replied. That's more than I deserve and everything I want. That night, after David left and Marcus was asleep, I stood in my kitchen and tried to make sense of the hurricane my life had become. 4 months ago, I'd been a single mother building a quiet life. I'd known exactly who I was and what I wanted and how to protect myself from ever being hurt again. Now the man who'd shattered me was moving to my city. My son adored him. And I was feeling things I'd sworn I'd never feel again. The phone rang. Elena checking in like she always did. "He's moving here," I said without preamble. "Opening an office. He'll be here 3 weeks out of every month." "Wow." Elena's voice was carefully neutral. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified. Hopeful. Both at the same time." "And what are you going to do?" "I don't know. Keep watching. Keep waiting. See if he can actually sustain this. And if he can, then I'll have to figure out whether I'm brave enough to let him in. Really in. Not just as Marcus's father but as something more." The silence on the other end of the line was loaded with everything Elena wasn't saying. "You've spent 6 years surviving," she finally said. "Building walls. Protecting yourself. And that was necessary. That kept you alive. But Foxy, at some point, survival isn't enough. At some point, you have to decide whether you want to actually live. What if he hurts me again? Then you'll survive that too. You've already proven you can. But what if he doesn't? What if he's actually become the man you needed him to be? Are you going to punish him forever for who he was, or give him credit for who he's become?" I didn't have an answer for that. But the question stayed with me long after I hung up the phone. David's transition to the city happened faster than I expected. Within 2 months, he'd purchased a house about 15 minutes from my apartment. Not ostentatious. A comfortable family home in a good neighborhood with a backyard and a room that he specifically designed for Marcus. "I want him to feel like he has a space here," David explained when he showed us around. "Somewhere that's just his." Marcus explored every inch of the house with the thoroughness of a home inspector. The room David had prepared for him had walls painted the exact shade of blue Marcus had described as his favorite during one of their video calls. There were dinosaur decorations and a reading nook by the window and shelves waiting to be filled with books and treasures. "This is mine," Marcus breathed. "Really mine. Really yours." David's voice was thick with emotion. "We can decorate it however you want." "Mama." Marcus turned to me with shining eyes. "Can I stay here sometimes? Like a sleepover?" I looked at the room David had created. At the care that had gone into every detail. At the evidence of a man trying desperately to make up for lost time. "We'll see," I said. "When you're ready. When we're all ready." The first sleepover happened 3 weeks later. I was nervous in a way I hadn't expected. Pacing my empty apartment. Checking my phone every 5 minutes for updates. Imagining all the ways this could go wrong. David called at 8 to report that Marcus had demanded 4 bedtime stories instead of the usual 2. "He says I have catching up to do," David explained, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "For all the stories I missed." He called again at 9 to confirm that Marcus was asleep. "Out like a light," David said. "Clutching Mr. Penguin and Dr. Scales. He told me they're best friends who protect him from bad dreams." "That's right," I confirmed. "They've been on the job for years. He's amazing, Foxy." David's voice was soft with wonder. "He's funny and smart and kind. You've raised an incredible kid." "I've tried. You've succeeded. Whatever happens between you and me, whatever you decide about us, I need you to know that I'm grateful. For keeping him safe. For loving him enough for both of us. For building him into the person he is." I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. "Sleep well, Foxy. I'll have him home tomorrow by noon." "Okay. And Foxy." "Yes. Thank you. For trusting me with him. Even for one night. It means more than I can express." I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long time, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions that phone call had stirred up. David wasn't just proving himself as a father. He was proving himself as a person. Patient. Consistent. Thoughtful. Everything I'd needed him to be 6 years ago and hadn't believed he could become. Maybe people could change. Maybe the man who'd broken me had genuinely transformed into someone worthy of trust. Or maybe this was all an elaborate performance that would crumble the moment things got difficult. I wouldn't know until I tested it. The test came unexpectedly. For months after David moved to the city, I noticed a car following me. The same silver sedan, appearing in my rearview mirror on my way to work, parked across the street from my apartment, idling near Marcus's school during pickup. The old fear came flooding back. The paranoia I'd thought I'd left behind. The certainty that something terrible was about to happen. I called David. "There's a car," I said without preamble. "Silver sedan. I've seen it at least 4 times in the past week. Always nearby. Always watching. Are you safe right now?" David's voice was sharp with focus. "I'm at home. Marcus is at school for another 2 hours. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm calling my security team and I'll be there in 15 minutes. David." I hated how scared I sounded. I hated how quickly I'd called him. But I didn't know what else to do. What if they're back? What if you were wrong about eliminating the threat? Then we deal with it together. I'm not leaving you alone with this, Foxy. Not ever again. He was at my door in 12 minutes. His security team arrived 20 minutes after that. Discreet, professional people who swept my apartment for bugs and pulled footage from nearby security cameras and traced the silver sedan's license plate. By evening, they had answers. It wasn't the old threat. It was a new one. A disgruntled former employee of David's company who blamed him for a layoff 3 years ago and had decided to target anyone connected to David. "He's been taken into custody," David's head of security reported. "Local police are involved. Restraining order is being processed. He's a disturbed individual, but he's not connected to the people from before." This was personal vendetta, not organized crime. The relief was staggering. But underneath it was something else. Something I hadn't expected. David had handled this perfectly. He'd listened to my fear without dismissing it. He'd taken action without taking over. He'd been transparent about every step of the process, keeping me informed, asking my input, treating me as a partner rather than a problem to be managed. This is what it could have been, I realized. 6 years ago. If he'd trusted me enough to tell me the truth. If he'd fought alongside me instead of fighting alone. "Are you okay?" David asked after his security team left. "I'm shaken. But okay. Thank you for handling this." "You don't have to thank me. You're my family, Foxy. You and Marcus. Protecting you isn't a favor. It's just what I do." Family. The word hung in the air between us. I didn't correct him. That night, Marcus asked me a question I'd been dreading. We were curled up on the couch watching a movie, his small body warm against my side, when he muted the television and looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mama. Do you love Daddy?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Why do you ask that, baby?" "Because Tommy at school says when mamas and daddies love each other, they live in the same house. But we don't live with Daddy. So I want to know if you love him." I chose my words carefully. "Love is complicated, sweetheart. Your daddy and I care about each other. We both love you more than anything in the world. But whether we love each other in the way you're talking about, that's something we're still figuring out." Marcus considered this with the intensity he brought to all important matters. "I think he loves you," he said finally. "I can tell by how he looks at you. It's the same way you look at me. Like you're scared I'll disappear." The observation was so accurate it stole my breath. "You're very perceptive," I managed. "I know." He settled back against me and unmuted the television. "I hope you figure it out, Mama. I like it when Daddy's around. The house feels less empty." Out of the mouths of children. The anniversary crept up on me. I trained myself not to notice the date. March 16th. Marcus's birthday, yes, but also something else. Something I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten. David remembered. He showed up at my door that morning with an expression I couldn't read. Part grief, part hope, part something I was afraid to name. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Just us." I asked Elena to take Marcus for a few hours. "You asked Elena?" She said yes. Apparently she's decided I'm marginally trustworthy. That's high praise from Elena. I know. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd nursed Marcus through midnight feedings and first steps and 1,000 ordinary moments David had missed. "Do you know what today's date is?" David asked quietly. "March 16th. Marcus's birthday." "Yes. But also." He stopped. Swallowed. Tried again. 6 years ago, I had plans for this day. Plans I never got to carry out. I felt the blood drain from my face. What kind of plans? David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Worn at the edges. Obviously old. I was going to propose, he said. That weekend. I had the ring. I had the speech memorized. I was going to take you to that restaurant where we had our first date and ask you to spend your life with me. And then everything happened with my brother and the threats and I had to leave and I. His voice cracked. I've kept this. For 6 years. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped. Maybe I was too broken to let it go. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, beautiful. Exactly what I would have chosen for myself. I'm not proposing now, David said quickly. That's not why I'm showing you this. I needed you to know. I need you to understand that I wasn't running away from you. I was running toward a future I thought we'd have together. And losing that future, losing you, has been the greatest grief of my life. The tears came before I could stop them. 6 years, I whispered. You've carried that ring for 6 years. Every day. Through everything. Because somehow, letting go of it felt like letting go of the hope that I might find you again. And now you have. And now I have. David closed the box and set it on the coffee table between us. I'm not asking for anything, Foxy. I know I don't have the right. But I needed you to know what I lost. What we both lost. Not just the past 6 years, but the future we were supposed to have. I stared at the velvet box. At the visible evidence of dreams that had died the same week I discovered I was pregnant and alone. All this time, I said slowly, I thought you left because you didn't love me. Because someone else came along. Because I wasn't enough. You were everything. David's voice was fierce. You were the first person who saw me, really saw me, not the money or the company or the power. Just me. And leaving you felt like cutting off my own arm. I've spent 6 years missing you. Wondering where you were. Hoping you were happy even though hoping hurt. I was so angry, I admitted. For so long. I built my entire identity around that anger. And now you're telling me it was based on a lie. Not a lie you told, but a lie I constructed. A story I made up to explain something I couldn't understand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I put you in a position where that was the only story that made sense. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd lost and everything we might still find. What do you want, David? I finally asked. Not what you think I want to hear. Not what you think is appropriate or reasonable. What do you actually want? He met my eyes with an honesty that made my heart stutter. I want you. I want Marcus. I want the family we should have been. I want to wake up next to you and help you raise our son and grow old together and all the ordinary, boring, beautiful things I gave up 6 years ago. But Foxy. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what you want. What you can offer. What you're willing to risk. What if I'm not willing to risk anything? Then I'll take whatever you can give. Father to your son. Friend if that's all you have room for. Distant observer if that's all you can handle. I'll take crumbs if crumbs are all that's on the table because any connection to you is better than the nothing I've had for 6 years. That's not fair, I protested. You can't put this on me. You can't make me responsible for deciding. I'm not trying to put pressure on you. David's voice was gentle. I'm trying to tell you the truth. I've spent 6 years lying by omission, protecting you from information you had a right to know. I'm done lying. This is what I want. What I've always wanted. What I'll keep wanting no matter what you decide. Now the choice is yours. I need time, I said finally. My voice was shaking. I need to think. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Happy birthday to our son, he said quietly. Thank you for bringing him into the world. Thank you for loving him enough for both of us while I was gone. Whatever happens between us, that gift is something I'll never be able to repay. Then he was gone, and I was alone with a velvet box and a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I spent 3 days thinking. 3 days of going through the motions of normal life while my mind raced through possibilities and fears and hopes I was terrified to acknowledge. I made lists. Pros and cons, reasons to trust him. Reasons to protect myself. Evidence for and against his transformation. I talked to Elena until she threatened to start charging therapist fees. I watched Marcus with David during their scheduled time together, looking for signs of facade or manipulation. I found nothing but consistency. Care. Love that had nowhere to hide. On the fourth night, I made my decision. I showed up at David's door at 9 in the evening, after Marcus was asleep at Elena's for a sleepover. David answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly not expecting visitors. "Foxy. Is everything okay? Is Marcus?" "Marcus is fine. I need to talk to you." He stepped aside to let me in. His house was comfortable and lived in now, evidence of the life he'd built here. Photos of Marcus on the mantle. A Lego creation in progress on the coffee table. Proof that he wasn't just visiting this life but inhabiting it. "I've been thinking," I said. "Okay." For 6 years, I built walls. I told myself they were protection. Safety. Strength. And they were, for a while. They kept me alive when I wasn't sure I wanted to be. They gave me structure when everything else was chaos. David listened without interrupting. "But walls don't just keep danger out," I continued. "They keep everything out. Including the things that might actually be worth letting in. And I'm tired, David. I'm tired of being safe and alone. I'm tired of surviving instead of living. I'm tired of punishing you for choices you made to protect me, even if those choices hurt." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. Not forgive you completely, that's going to take time. Not trust you automatically, that has to be earned. But try. Try to build something new. Something that doesn't carry all the weight of what we lost. Something that starts from where we are now instead of where we were then." David's expression cycled through shock, hope, disbelief, and something that looked dangerously like joy. "Are you sure?" "No. I'm terrified. I'm taking the biggest risk I've ever taken. And if you hurt me again, if you let Marcus down, if this turns out to be a mistake." "It won't be," David interrupted fiercely. "I swear to you, Foxy. I've spent 6 years becoming someone worthy of this chance. I'm not going to waste it." "Actions," I reminded him. "Not words. Show me." "I will. Every day. For as long as you let me." He moved toward me slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he took my hand. Just held it. Nothing more. "I love you," he said simply. "I've never stopped. I know I don't have the right to say that yet. I know I haven't earned it back. But I wanted you to know. Whatever we build from here, it starts with that truth." I looked at our joined hands. At the man who had broken me and the man he had become. At the terrifying possibility of second chances. "I love you too," I admitted. "I've been trying not to. For 6 years. But it turns out some things don't go away just because you want them to." The smile that spread across David's face was incandescent. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we take it slow. We build something real. We show Marcus what it looks like when two people choose each other even when it's hard. I can do that. And David." I squeezed his hand. "If you ever lie to me again. If you ever make decisions about my life without consulting me, even if you think you're protecting me. We're done. No more chances. No explanations accepted. I understand. Complete honesty. Complete partnership. I promise." We stood there for a long moment, holding hands in his living room, on the edge of something new and terrifying and full of possibility. It wasn't a fairy tale. We had too much history for that. Too many scars. Too many years of pain to pretend we were starting fresh. But maybe it was something better. Something earned. Something real. And for the first time in 6 years, I let myself believe it might actually last. 1 year later, we stood in the backyard of the house David had bought. Our house now. The one I'd finally agreed to move into 3 months ago, after countless conversations about what that meant and what we wanted and how to build a life together without losing ourselves in the process. Marcus was turning 7. The yard was full of children and parents and the controlled chaos of birthday celebration. Elena was manning the cake table. David was organizing some elaborate game involving water balloons. I watched them all from the porch, my hand resting on my stomach where a new life was just beginning to grow. We'd found out last week. Another miracle I hadn't known I was hoping for. "Mama." Marcus broke away from the game to run toward me. "Are you happy?" "Very happy, baby. Because Daddy's here now. Because our family is together. Whatever that looks like. However it works." Marcus considered this with the seriousness he brought to all important questions. "I'm glad you let him come back," he said finally. "The house is less empty now." "It is. He hugged me quickly, then ran back to the game, where David caught him mid-stride and swung him in a circle while Marcus shrieked with laughter. David caught my eye across the yard and smiled. The smile I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. The smile I'd mourned for 6. The smile I got to see every day now, earned through patience and consistency and the slow hard work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect. We still had hard days. We still fought sometimes, about laundry and parenting decisions and who forgot to buy milk. We were still two imperfect people trying to build something beautiful out of broken pieces. But we were building it together. And that made all the difference. If you're watching this and wondering whether second chances exist. If you've been hurt and you're afraid to trust again. If someone from your past is asking for another opportunity and you don't know whether to believe them. Here's what I learned. Sometimes the person who hurt you was carrying burdens you couldn't see. Sometimes leaving was an act of love disguised as abandonment. Sometimes the story you told yourself about what happened was missing crucial chapters. That doesn't mean everyone deserves a second chance. Some people do just leave because they're selfish or cruel or incapable of love. Some wounds can't be healed. But sometimes the person who shattered you has spent years putting themselves back together. Sometimes they've done the work. Sometimes they're ready to show up in ways they couldn't before. And if that's true, if you can see the evidence with your own eyes, then maybe, just maybe, it's worth taking the risk. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve the chance to find out. The night I threw myself into that stranger's car with my dying son, I thought I was running from my past. I didn't know I was running into my future. David Smith broke my heart 6 years ago. But here's what I learned. Sometimes broken things can be rebuilt. Sometimes the people who hurt us were fighting battles we couldn't see. Sometimes second chances aren't about forgetting. They're about forgiving. Including forgiving yourself for the walls you had to build to survive. We're not a fairy tale. We're something better. We're real. Messy and imperfect and absolutely real. And if you're watching this wondering whether love is worth the risk. Whether that person deserves another chance. Whether you deserve another chance. Maybe start with getting in the car. You never know where the journey might take you. If this story touched you. If you believe in second chances and the power of patient love. I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that broken things can be rebuilt. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson's Stories and turn on that notification bell because this is what we do here. We tell the truth about love and loss and the messy, beautiful work of becoming better than we were. Drop a comment telling me your story. Have you ever been given a second chance? Have you ever given one? I want to hear from you because this isn't just a channel. It's a community of people who believe that our worst moments don't have to define our entire story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. And remember, every ending is just a beginning you haven't recognized yet. Until next time, this is Mr. Dawson. Keep believing in second chances.